if you identify that there's a problem, then you're more than likely a part of the solution. And what I mean is, there's a lot of times where we'll say, "Oh man, that sounds bad or that looks bad." Well, the majority of people don't actually know what they're seeing. The majority of people don't know what is good quality, what's bad quality. Now on a certain basic level, we do, but for someone to call it out and say, "Hey, there's a problem. This looks bad or sounds bad," well, then there's probably a way that you can step up and you can say, "I can fix that."
Hello, my name is Hugh Plappert, and welcome to Church Tech Careers, where we go into the back office of ministry and learn how to uplift our church members and have an impact on our communities through technology. And today's video is brought to you by PhoneLive.io. Well, media has changed over the decades, and so much has happened. And as kids growing up, I had that background of ham radios, actually, where I got started. But it opened all kinds of doors for great things that we do today in the ministry with media. Hello, my name is Hugh Plappert, and welcome to Church Tech Careers. Our special guest today is Thomas Egler. He is Director of Media and Technology. He's also director of Love Life Marriage Ministries for Wheaton Christian Center in Illinois. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Hugh. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I really love everything that you're doing. It's important to kind of highlight, some of the guys who are in the background most of their careers. And so, yeah, I'm just happy to be here to talk with you and tell some stories.
Yeah, first in, first out. FEMO, the
Oh,
media
yeah,
people,
that's
the
right.
first ones in
Philo.
church and the last ones,
Yeah,
Philo. Yeah, that's something else.
yeah,
First in, last out. Yeah,
yeah.
Philo. Wow. So before we get started today, you're going way back and the influences in your life in media ministry. So if you can share that story with our audience.
Sure, yeah. So again, my name is Thomas Egler, and I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. And so my family, my mom and dad, they were pastors. I started out in youth ministry, and so I was able to just kind of see their entire journey. One of their really good friends and brother, he's my godfather, William Perkins, and so he and his wife, they were really big into, back in the 80s and 90s, they were the tape ministry people. And so they ran the tape ministry. They would record all the sermons, all the music, anything at my church. And then it just kind of grew. And, he went to another large, huge church in Cleveland. And he was, working there, Mount Zion Church out in Cleveland. And he was just the person that when I was a kid, he would have his large recorder, his video recorder, his camera, and he would bring it to family events. And then he was always very progressive. So went from the large video camera to the small camcorders. He, eventually made a studio. He built a studio, was very functioning. He was able to bring bands and singers and everyone to record in his studio. And so then he went on to do other things with PBS and, other like local stations. And so I saw he normalized media as a kid for me. And just able to see, him work in media ministry, but then also as an entrepreneur. And he modeled just again working in ministry, being a husband, a family man, a man of God, and really serious about media. And so I learned a lot of my foundation from like the analog era. And so
Yeah.
where I work with people now, they're like, "How do you know the settings? How do you know it's because I learned from analog, took that to digital, and now of course we're in the AI era." So that's a lot about my background. And I also started
Right.
in music, and so that's a big part of my history is that my mom is a singer, and her entire side of the family, they do a lot of music and stuff. And so I just learned, we call it the Showtime gene. I'm really kind of more of an introvert. I'm a half and half introvert extrovert, but I grew up on stage. I grew up, my family, we would go to the local news station. Now it's like Fox 8 or something like that in Cleveland. And on holidays, my mom's side of the family has a choir, and they would sing. We would travel. They recorded albums back in the 80s. And so I just grew up around music and production. So that's my background.
Right. So do you have any formal training in media?
Yeah. So I first, like I said, started out in music. My major in school, I went to Northern Illinois University, and I was studying for jazz performance. And then my professors, they were still out like jobbing and gigging and traveling, and so they weren't only available but so often. And so from there, I said, you know what? I knew guys who were in the jazz department who were like 6 years, 7 years undergrad. And so I'm like, at this point, honestly, I might as well become a doctor if I'm going to stay in school undergrad that long, you know. And so let me change my major from music to media. And you know, I was interested in writing and things like that. And I did an internship because again, I talked about my godfather. He, you know, would always had media and cameras and things like that around us. And so once we moved from Cleveland to Illinois, my dad went to Wheaton College later in life after he had gotten married and started a family. And so from there, you know, I said, let me major in media, you know, and I did an internship the summer before I declared my major in media. And I'll try to make this a quick story. So essentially, I was doing drum lessons and I was going to give up drums because it was like, you know, I had done this tour with my mom's choir. She was directing gospel choir at Wheaton College while my dad was in school at Wheaton College. And so she's now entering into like her 35th year, I think, of directing the gospel choir there. So I was playing drums with her choir, and she does tours literally every year since 1990, all over the United States. We've been to Thailand, to Korea, to Japan, to Hawaii. We've been all over the place. And so we went on this one tour, and there was a kid who was just ripping it up on the drums. He was incredible. And I was like freshman or sophomore year in college, and this kid was like junior high. And he was just like running circles around me. And so now we fast forward to I'm doing drum lessons in the summer because I just want to get better. I have music in my bones, but technically I just had a lot of growth to do. And so I'm just like, Lord, I'm just praying on my driving in the way that I'm like, Lord, why am I even doing music? This kid's running circles around me. I need to do something different, you know? And I get to drum lessons and my drum teacher's like, hey, I know you're trying to audition for the jazz department. I know you need a drum set. There's this older lady. She donated a drum set to this church. Check it out. Let me know what you think. If you want it, you can, you know, have it. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know, I'm playing. It sounds amazing. I'm like, how much? He's like, no, it's free. I'll give it to you, but you cannot sell this. Make sure you bless it and pass it on to someone else. So I said, okay, great. Fast forward at the end of so that was in the spring. So now in the summer, I'm like, okay, I'm going into media. I need a media internship. I found this guy who brought a whole entire media team to my church. He's got headsets and all these things, and like, it's like lights, camera, action. So I'm like, all right, let me get in contact with him. I find his information and I say, hey, I would love to intern with you. He was like part of a Catholic organization. And I'm like, he's doing youth videos and things like that. And so he'd never done that before, like an internship. So he's like, hey, I've never done this, but I'm willing to show you everything I know. So I worked with him that entire summer, get to the end of the summer, and I'm like, hey, I have my mom did this concert and she needs a video edited. I shot some footage. Can I use your software? He was using Final Cut Pro. I think it was like 4 or 5 back then. It was like, you know, it was
Mhm.
old. So I'm using Final Cut on his Mac, his Apple computer, and I forget what version it was. But anyway, I'm using it on his computer and he's like, hey, I got to take my kids to a baseball game. So I'm thinking he's kicking me out of his house. It's time to go. And he says, hey, my wife and I want to talk to you. So I come upstairs. He said, hey, we spent a lot of time with you. And he said, what was poured into me when I was a kid is, you know, he said, my wife's dad saw a lot of potential and wanted to bless me with my first car and a couple other things to get started in business. And
Right.
he says, my wife and I would like to do the exact same thing with you. He says, I want to bless you with a new camera, computer, and the software to run everything. And he says, and we're going to get on the phone and order it right now. And so I got my first Canon, I think it was a GL2. I got a PowerBook G4 laptop as a Mac, and then I got Final Cut. And those were the three tools that really got me started. in media. So that was the formal training. So I went into school that next semester as a communications director or communications major, and
Right.
my emphasis was media. And so yeah, they at the time they didn't have like a film school. And so what I did was I just, I created an interdisciplinary study. So I was, doing like art appreciation, film appreciation. I was doing lighting. I was doing stage production. I was doing photo, everything I could that had to do with media out of school. So that was my experience at Northern Illinois University.
Then how did you transition into doing media for a church?
So, like I said, my parents were in media. I'm sorry, my parents were in ministry my entire life. So I just saw them, working and serving. And, there were lots of times when it was difficult because a lot of times, ministry, depending on what church you're at, ministry doesn't pay a whole lot. But even during those times, I saw God really show up for my family. When financially was a struggle, God would put it on someone's heart to or bring food or bring money or an opportunity for my dad to speak would open up and he would get paid from that. Or time and time again I would see God's hand of provision and purpose in my family's life. My mom, one of her prayers was just always that God would use our family to tell the world about Jesus. And so once she started doing her tours with the gospel choir, we were literally going all over the world. My dad would he was kind of like the chaplain for the choir. My mom, of course, was the director and the singer, and then I played drums. My sister was at the time I'm like 8, 9 years old. My brother is about 6, and my sister's like 3. So we're just like following along, learning ministry, seeing ministry, and so it just made sense that everything we did, whether it's music or media, it was a part of ministry. Our hearts were just for God and for the people of God and for serving. And so that's kind of how it made sense for us to get into transition from music and media into ministry as well.
We like to be proactive in media, plan ahead, have projects, deliver, right? But sometimes, especially in live ministry, you got to be reactive. Something happens unexpectedly. Did you ever have a situation that was a challenge like that? You had to not pull your hair out of your head and get through it and make it okay?
Yeah. Oh, as a matter of fact, there was something just about a month and a half ago. So, again, I said my parents were in ministry. And so my parents were pastors. My wife, her parents were also pastors. And so we both grew up in ministry. My wife, by the way, she is Stephanie. She's incredible. She's a graphic designer by trade. And she's also doing so many other things. She's our church administrator. She's incredible with interior design. Now, recently, exterior design. She just did the look of our church entirely, and so it looks incredible. We're getting so many compliments from the community. But I say that because, yeah, so our church, they know that we come from a ministry background, and so they've seen us even without any titles. We just love to serve people. And so our pastors invited us to become ministers at our church. And it was like, whoa, this is, we've seen our parents as pastors. And that wasn't really the path that we were on. But clearly it's something that we were doing, just innately. And so from there, so we say yes. So after a lot of time of thinking and just like, yeah, I don't know about this, and then we both took a real hard, time to just think and pray about it. We accepted the positions of ministers. And so at our church, the ministers, rotate prayer in the mornings. And so before church even starts, 30 minutes, I think it's like an hour before church starts, we do prayer. And so again, I'm talking a lot now, but I'm not really that much of an extroverted person. One on one, I'm really, really good. But if you give me a microphone, I know what to say. I just get a little bit nervous and shaky. And so, because I'm
Mhm.
so much behind the scenes, and hopefully you guys who are on video, whether you're on a camera, you're editing, you're a director, whatever, if God puts something in your heart to say and to do, by all means, do it. Even if you're afraid, do it if you're nervous, do it if you're, whatever, because you can reach the people that God's like your experiences allow you to reach the people that God specifically has for you to reach. And so that's something that I've learned in the last couple of years. Anyway, so we're supposed to lead prayer this morning, and I am I'm just like running over the topics and the things I want to pray about. And the mics, all of a sudden, we have a ULX Shure system in our church, wireless mic system, and we run everything wirelessly through Dante. Dante is a network that connects things wirelessly, and it's an internal network in the church. Well, all of a sudden, our Dante network is not communicating clearly with, or like the connection is broken with our wireless receivers and transmitters. And so all of a sudden, like mics are just dropping out and left and right. And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Church starts literally in 1 hour. So what are we going to do? So, and I pray, we have to pray like in 10 minutes from now. And so I'm just like trying everything. I'm troubleshooting this and that. And like, thankfully, I have a lot of experience in troubleshooting because my wife and I started our own media production company back in 2010. The company is called Sure Thing Studios. And so we do video, graphics, photo, everything. If you have the ability, I'm sure you've done that same thing at some point. And so I'm troubleshooting. It's 10 minutes before prayer. And then I'm like, all right, Lord, this is what I've gotten good at in terms of troubleshooting. My experience only goes but so far. And so what I do now is I stop and say, God, please show me the way. I need help right now because in our industry, you need to get results immediately. And so if you can, God, download the idea from heaven, help me to see where it is and figure it out. And, almost every time, then I stop worrying about it. And I just like, okay, guys, let's see what we can do. And I always try to surround myself with guys who are either smarter than me, or I've tried to like impart as much information as I can to them. And so this was one of those situations where 5 minutes left until it was time for me to actually pray. And no, maybe like 3 minutes. And then I'm like, wait a minute, let's try rebooting our network switch, unplug all of our Ethernet cables. This is basics. If
Mhm.
if things aren't working, do a hard reset. Shut everything down, start it back up, and don't try to like, all the intricate, well, what about this networking thing? What about our brains go too complicated sometimes during troubleshooting moments. And God said, just, he gave me the idea, go back to the basics, do something super simple, restart the network switch, unplug the Ethernet cables, give it a couple minutes, and everything was working again. So it was down to the wire.
Yeah, I've been there too in my computer background and in prayer or in a dream at night and then going the next day and there's the answer. Yeah,
It's good.
have a lot on God.
It's good.
On the other side of the spectrum, how have you seen your media ministry impact and change lives? A lot of times, because we're behind the scenes, you don't connect the dots. But have you seen that where, because the media ministry was there, it opened that door or made a difference?
For sure. So, kind of going back in my story a little bit, once I graduated from NIU, like I said, I was traveling, I'm playing drums. I'm actually now at this point, I'm playing drums at a church called Willow Creek in South Barrington, Illinois. And so, this church it's a large, church out here. It's one of the mega churches that people from all over the world at the time were coming for conferences. They were coming to see, what were we doing for like the latest technology and all these different things in terms of music and media. And then, of course, in leadership. And so I was able to take a lot of my experience and just really hone in on what is it that God wants me to do? What does he want me to learn from this experience? Because I was there for almost 20 years. I started working the very first time that I stepped foot on the Willow Creek campus was in 2000. So I was still in college, and I had like one more year to graduate, and it was just a whole new world. Everything that you can imagine on like the largest scale, those are the things we did. I mean, pyrotechnics. I have on my Instagram page, I have me traveling with the band, and we're doing a conference at the stadium in, where is it at? In is one of the southern states, in Tennessee. And we're at the stadium, and right behind me, there's like pyrotechnics going off, and like we have this large, like Grammy award winning stage. Like it was just unbelievable, man. And this is before like people were using LED screens on a regular basis. I mean, we have like 50 LED walls and hundreds of lights. Like it was incredible. So I take all of that experience and now I'm coming back to, small church, home church. And what I've seen a lot is what I learned from my Willow Creek experience is like they were like almost the Apple of church. They were incredible with training, incredible with personal development, incredible with adding value into people. And so that's one thing that I really learned is how do I add value to everyone around me, whether it's in music or media? How do I make sure that everyone feels valued, they feel seen, heard, and loved, appreciated? And so I've been able to take that experience and bring it back home. And so what I've seen people is people who didn't have much confidence in themselves, people who didn't think that they could do it. Once I'm able to sit down and really invest in them and like I love to identify what people are good at and what is your purpose. And what I've noticed is when you do that, then people really, really shine. They blossom. It's almost like they come alive again. And so I've seen that so many times where you sit down with people, and this is outside of media, but it's pertaining to our relationship is because of media and where they just really, really shine. And so I've also my wife and we started doing a podcast. And so we do like a lot of social media clips and we post things just talking about life. At first it started about media and then it transitioned into let's talk about, marriage and family and things that we've experienced, our ups and downs. And it might not work for you, but this is what worked for us, and through that use of our media, our video, our graphic experience, we've posted videos that we had no idea people were watching, but they're like, man, they after we've stopped for a while, like, why aren't you guys posting anymore? My fiance and we were using those videos as like our own counseling, and just the change and the impact that it makes in people's lives to be able to use media in that way is just like, who knew that when I first decided to declare my major back
Right.
in the early 2000s, that God would allow media to be used in that way. So there's countless other stories that are not coming to mind right now, but
Uh,
specifically that's what in my life that's what been a big change, a big impact.
right. So speak to that person that maybe they're not as well trained as in media, but yet their church has a need and they're debating if they should step up and help and they seem to be
Mm,
overwhelmed.
sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I would say to someone who first, if you identify that there's a need, if you identify that there's a problem, then you're more than likely a part of the solution. And what I mean is, there's a lot of times where we'll say, "Man, that sounds bad or that looks bad." Well, the majority of people don't actually know what they're seeing. The majority of people don't know what is good quality, what's bad quality. Now on a certain basic level, we do, but for someone to call it out and say, "Hey, there's a problem. This looks bad. It sounds bad," well, then there's probably a way that you can step up and you can say, "I can fix that. I can help with fixing that." That means you have a heart, you have a mind to help out and be a part of the solution. Now, if you're not formally trained, one thing I would say is most people nowadays are not. And what I mean is there's YouTube University, there's, so many Chat GPT, there's Claude, there's so many things that you can now go to school and get all the information that you need. And then I would also say, if you really want to be serious about this and take it to the next level, then I would say find someone who is ahead of you, who is an expert in what you want to do. They may be a leader or whatever. Talk to them. Make sure that you are humble. Because I know a lot of times in media, we have a certain personality, an A type personality where, where we can be very straight and cut and dry. We can, not want to get too much help, but get as much help as you can. People are very willing to help when you come to them from a humble standpoint. And so I would say again, the internet, AI is your best friend, YouTube is your best friend, and then just talk to people who really know what they're doing.
And get burnt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
You'll learn.
fail and fail often. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Thomas, it has been really refreshing and great speaking with you today. Appreciate you taking the time to share your testimony and what God's doing through media. If our folks wanted to reach out and connect with you, is there an appropriate way that they can?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. My name there is Thomas.Egler. You can find me online. My company that my wife and I have started is Sure Thing Studios. That's SureThing Studios, Studios.com. And so those are two ways that you can reach me. All my information is there.
Thank you to those that joined us today here on YouTube. We appreciate you leaving a comment, liking, or sharing this video. And join us in our next broadcast as we learn more about behind the scenes, how media and ministry is making a difference in lives and churches. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We appreciate you leaving a review, liking, and sharing this podcast wherever you have joined us. I'm looking forward to next week here on Church Tech Careers as we navigate the back office of ministry and how we can have an impact on our community and uplift the members of our local church. And today's video is brought to you by PhoneLive.io.